Welcome to the third New York State PowHer Women's Equality Wednesday Hangout. I am Donna Seymour, the Public Policy Vice President for the American Association of University Women of New York State. I'll be moderating our conversation today about economic opportunity and access for women. Today's format is meant to invite questions and comments from you, the audience. So we hope if you're watching live that you will tweet your questions using our PowHerList hashtag or click on the Google Hangout question function on your screen. New York State PowHer is an inclusive, statewide network committed to securing economic security for all New York State women. Each Wednesday through the election, we're holding a conversation about an important issue. Through this collaboration, we will attain PowHer, which stands for Poverty Solutions, Opportunity and Access, Workplace Fairness, Healthier Lives, Equal pay, and representation at all tables. Please note that the New York State PowHer is strictly nonpartisan, and the opinions that are expressed by our guests do not necessarily represent those of the organization. Today, my Google Hangout guests are Lisa Maatz. Lisa is the Vice President of Government Relations for AAUW. She's AAUW's top public policy advisor. Francoise Jacobsohn. Francoise is the project manager for the Equal Rights Advocates and the coordinator in New York State Collaboration for Women in Construction. And Marie Sullivan. Marie is the training coordinator for the New York City Local 15 of the International Union of Operating Engineers. Historic stereotyping has resulted in limited opportunities and options for women, often funneling them into low-paying, pink-collar jobs, where lack of education, power, and capital hinder them. As we learned in last week's PowHer session, 40% of households with children have female breadwinners, yet these women are often disproportionately low-wage income workers. Traditionally, education has been one of the ways that people have climbed up the economic ladder. But over the last 3 decades, the price of a college education has increased by more than 1,200%, and student loan debt has quadrupled in the 10-year period between 2003 and 2013. More than 40 million Americans currently hold student debt, and they are collectively responsible for $1.2 trillion in outstanding student loans. Lisa, community colleges have long proved both accessible and affordable for first-time students. They are often the first step down the road to a better-paying job, upgraded skills, and more economic opportunity. They can offer everything from a short-term certificate course to an associate degree, and even a higher degree when partnered with a 4-year school. Please outline for us what AAUW's research on community colleges tells us about the pathway to opportunity for women, and in particular how the 36 community colleges here in New York State are leading the way. And let's also talk a little bit about how student debt is limiting that access. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna, and thanks to my fellow panelists and everyone listening in. I'm so glad to be part of the Google Hangout today. Community colleges is something that AUW has taken an increasing interest in, largely in many respects pushed by the whole student debt issue. We know that for a lot of folks, starting out at a community college is a way to decrease student debt, doing either their full degree or their first two years there. Difference. But beyond that, we also know that community colleges are dominated by women. The vast majority of students at community colleges are women, and a lot of the degrees actually that come out of community colleges are in what we would call women-dominated fields, the healthcare fields and so forth. But they really play an important role, I think, in terms of making college more affordable and more accessible. The other thing that I think they play a huge role in a community, and New York is actually a really good example with the work of community colleges you have there. Community colleges, while they have basically a majority of their folks are more traditional college age, you actually have a great opportunity for people to come back to school after they've been out in the workplace for a while. And we see this specifically in New York. I thought it was very interesting to see that college age, the kind of 18 to 24-year-olds, only 67% of male community college students fit that bill, 18 to 24, but only 57% of women students. So not quite the majority, but almost half are older than the typical age. And these are typically women who've been out in the workplace. They've seen what's going on. They know they want to retrain and retool to be more competitive in the global economy. And so they go back to school. And community colleges are a great place. One of the reasons why they can be helpful is that many of them have childcare. New York in particular is pretty good. 32 out of 36 institutions have childcare. It doesn't always mean they have all the hours we need. Sometimes we need nighttime childcare and weekend childcare for studying and so on and so forth. But that's much higher than the national average. So New York is actually, I think, above the curve there, well above the curve in terms of providing that service. So the thing to remember, I think, about community colleges is that they provide skill-based training. They can be an entree to well-paying jobs with a 2-year degree, particularly in the tech industries, the STEM fields. But they also then can be a very affordable way to begin the process of a bachelor's degree, which we know for many jobs these days is actually the baseline of what you need to move forward. So New York is actually, as I said, pretty good shape, but this is something that we need to continue to pay attention to, especially as federal and state budgets continue to cut education. Unfortunately, our community colleges are getting the brunt of that.
Thank you, Lisa. But we know there's more than one way to get on the path to a good career. Francoise, in order to break the cycle of poverty, women need better paying jobs with benefits and career growth, like those offered by the non-traditional, male-dominated occupations. Would you please discuss with us how we can open those doors to women, moving them from pink-collar to the blue-collar skilled trades jobs? Thanks.
That's right. There's research that shows that at least 15% of the wage gap is due to occupational segregation. And if we could help more women and girls access the high-wage, non-traditional jobs in STEM, in science, technology, engineering, and math, we could make a real dent into the pay gap and women's economic security, especially in New York State, where female high school graduates earn at least $10,000 a year less than male high school graduates. So this is, and the field, for instance, in construction trades, where women make almost, I think it's 95 cents to the dollar in this field, mostly in New York State because it is also a union job. It's really a crucial way for women to have economic opportunity. And the problem is that there are the three real big barriers that are facing women in accessing these trades. First of all, stereotypes. Even in high schools, the National Coalition of Women and Girls in Education has put out a recent fact sheet that shows that in career and technical education high schools, the girls are clustered in the fields that are low wage, and the boys are clustered in the fields that are high wage. And so sure enough, that we start already in schools where we're steering girls away from the high wage jobs. And even more important, consider that the STEM fields, that 50% of the jobs in STEM are blue-collar jobs. So there's stereotyping and discrimination. One of the ways, and you're going to hear from one of our awesome tradeswomen role models in a little bit, but one of the ways is to really make sure that the non-traditional trades are sending women who are in these trades out to girls to show that they can do. The studies show that one of the biggest recruiting methods is to have someone who looks like you. So the boys already know that they can be an operating engineer. The girls don't. But when they see someone like me come to their school, then they're like, oh, she can do it, I can do it too. And then the other thing is in reinforcing the law. Unfortunately, I've met many tradeswomen over the years, and they all have at least one lawsuit that they don't bring. They don't bring the lawsuits because they want to work. They don't want to bring lawsuits. But really, there's rampant discrimination in terms of letting them do apprenticeship, in terms of giving them equal training, in terms of giving them the proper on-the-job training, and in terms of promotion. So one of the things is that we really need to go to our government and our elected officials and talk to them about enforcing the law, the equal opportunity law on construction sites.
Thank you. You make some excellent points there. And Marie, you are the face of a woman who is in a non-traditional trades job. You're a New York City operating engineer. You come out of the military where you were trained as a cargo handler and as a forklift operator. There are many women like you who have gained those non-traditional job skills during their military service. Can you talk to us a little bit about how women with your employment background can leverage their skills to gain entry into the non-traditional trade jobs, please?
Absolutely. Coming out of the military, which gives you pretty much a foundation for going into the non-traditional trades, because we're already exposed to being in a predominantly male environment. So when you go into non-traditional employment, that's basically what it is, all men. The disciplinary that we have to go through in the military pretty much prepares us as well as going to non-traditional jobs. The respect level is somewhat different, but you learn that when you're in the military, okay, you respect the uniform, you respect people better than a non-traditional. But I believe that the military has definitely given me the leverage to go into non-traditional because I'm already trained to be around men and be in an aggressive environment.
And can you just say a little bit more about how you found your way into a non-traditional trade? Because you didn't know about the operating engineers when you came out of the military.
No, actually I didn't. And when I was in the military, I got a little bit of experience on a forklift. And then what happened to me was I was introduced to NYU, which is non-traditional employment for women. And there is when I learned that I could take that forklift experience and turn it into a career. So that's one of the avenues that I used to get into my profession was through NYU. So they exposed me to all these different trades. It's just that I had a particular passion for being an operator.
And now,
and actually, Marie, you now train that way. You now train other people, so you are able to be that role model that we talked about earlier, and actually open those doors for women. So talk a little bit about your work as a trainer that allows you to do that, please.
Yes. So now I was pulled out of the field a couple of years ago, and first I became an instructor, and now through my experience from the field, now I teach women. And I also go back to mentor women at NYU, so I expose them to my trade. Okay, so it's definitely a good position for me to be in, so that I can take my experiences as an operating engineer and I go out to the women and I expose them to the things that are open to them. Let them know that, you know, non-traditional trade, they're there for us. And because I'm in a position now where I can teach, I go out and I teach women that, you know, you could, you know, come off of social service, you know, be able to afford to buy yourself a home. These are the things that non-traditional employment has, you know, made me better.
Thank you. Francoise, one of the programs that you work closely with focuses on getting women into the construction trade. What do you see there as the potential for women in this field, both in terms of wages and in terms of advancement?
Well, I think that actually New York City is exceptional in that regard because there are 4 women who are in charge of apprenticeship programs in the building trades in New York City. Marie is one, and she has 35% women in her apprenticeship school. The national average is less than 3%. Then there's Ellie Spicer, who is the training director for the largest school, largest apprenticeship school in the state, with over 1,000 apprentices, and she has 17% women in her school for the carpenters. And then there's Leah Rambo, who is the training director for the sheet metal workers, and she's been there 3 years. She started, I think there were 3% women, now there's over 10% women. And then there's Wendy Webb, who's the field coordinator for the apprenticeship school for the Mason Tenders, and she has over, I think, 15 to 17% of the women in her school. And actually a very funny story is promoted to go out to, in the field, and so she stopped doing the interviews, and in the year that she stopped doing the interviews, the percentage went down to 15%, so they called her back to do the interview, so we can really see that women make a difference. So what we're seeing here is women didn't really start entering in any numbers into the trades until 1978, when after a lawsuit, made goals for women in construction on federal construction sites, and now many of those women are rising to leadership. So we're really working very, very hard to support and make sure that people know about women like Marie and Ellie and Leah and Wendy, so that they can talk both about, you know, what they've overcome and how much they love their work and how much they need to really bring in more women. And I think that one of the things that's wonderful about people in position is that not only is she teaching women and mentoring women, but she's also teaching men. And so that men are learning right away. They see a woman who's in the position of of authority and who's teaching them how to do that, and so they already are very dependent on her. So that we really train them not to be not to be the person who's the cause of the lawsuits that women should be bringing but aren't.
Well, and what you're talking about there really is changing the culture of the work environment and broadening it and opening it up, and obviously having those 4 women in those key positions is really central to that, because again, it sets up that opportunity for people to see someone who looks like them doing a job that they hadn't seen before. So Marie, part of what you do for your work is you go to job trade fairs and you talk with prospective employees. And so tell us a little bit about what you're seeing at these job fairs. What do you think the future holds for the next generation of tradeswomen based on what you're seeing, interest in the field, and people coming in and asking about these jobs?
Well, at these job fairs, I've been seeing a lot of single women, minority women, women that are that one can't afford an education, so they're looking more towards the trades. A lot of trades, it's free to women. So I get a lot of women that come into me who are just trying to change their life in general. You know, they're trying to not just have a job that they go to every day, they're trying to obtain a career. So being that I see all these women, I'm noticing the change, because it's a different type of avenue. You know, programs like NEW are becoming more accessible to women, and because they are, more and more women are starting to look into the trades, starting to ask, how do I get into the trade? And being that, you know, they see me as an example, they know that this is possible. So these are the things that I'm seeing, and as for the future, as we continue to research different ways, like going into the colleges and letting them know about non-traditional jobs, it's making it better for women, the economy, everything.
Thank you. You know, Lisa, let's follow that theme up for a second and talk about the low-income student in particular. There's a new report out that talks about the number of higher ed institutes, private institutions, who seem to be sacrificing the openings for low-income students because they're focusing on the high-achieving, high-end students. We just saw a report this week that Syracuse University, there's some criticism of them that one of the programs that was really doing a lot to bring in the low-income student is maybe being discontinued, and those opportunities are drying up. There's another report out talking about the work study program that says that less than 2% of public community college students have work-study jobs, compared to 21% of four-year private, not-for-profit higher ed institutions. And the report goes on to say that one of the things that they think would help is if federal work-study could be promoted as a career-centric program with outside employers, instead of placing students in clerical or office work on campus, which is actually the pink-collar jobs on campus rather than the jobs that are maybe going to lead to the higher paying jobs out in the real work world.
Yeah, that's a great point. it's a great point about the federal work study. You know, it does become that clerical job that they actually, a lot of students hope they can study at instead of do a whole lot of work. But if you can make it more of an externship, a fellowship where folks are actually not just learning job skills, but also learning how the work world works and making contacts and networks that will help them find their first job when they graduate, that can be a huge issue. We know for students who are facing financial challenges, there are some resources out there, but with the budget cuts at the federal level, you know, you can try for a Pell Grant, but we used to have a Pell Grant that you could get year-round. We used to have a Pell Grant that you could get as a part-time student. And unfortunately, those types of Pell Grants have been taken away in order to prop up the funding for the traditional Pell Grant, which is great. We want that funding, but we know that when you take away the non-traditional types of Pell Grants, that disproportionately affects women. This is, again, where I think the community colleges come into play, because they are oftentimes a more affordable way of getting into school, and quite frankly, getting a two-year degree in certain high-skill positions can really be useful and be a good profession and earn a family wage. I think about the apprenticeships that my colleagues were talking about. It's something at the Department of Labor that Labor Secretary Tom Perez is really stressing, the whole idea of apprenticeships, of getting non-traditional folks into those fields, not just women, but people of color as well, and how we can, through the, I don't want to say force, I guess the control that we have over federal contracts, that we can encourage them to be providing these mentorship opportunities and these apprenticeship opportunities. So I think it's something that in an increasingly mobile population, we need to make sure people are educated and people understand that what that particular education means wherever they go. And the one last thing I would say in terms of these non-traditional fields for women, you know, they're really hard to outsource, right? I mean, you need carpenters, you need plumbers, you need electricians. That's a really hard job to send overseas. And so there's also that homegrown sense of it that we're seeing that's really useful, as well as I think the growing high-tech fields in terms of alternative forms of energy. That's the other place where we see a lot of growth.
That's a good point, and I also want to call something, as we're going to start talking a little bit about STEM education, I want to point out something that I was reading just today. A lot of low-income students kind of end up in the for-profit college world, which can be twice as expensive in the long run as an Ivy League university, and often costs 5 or 6 times as much as the price of a community college education. 96% of students who manage to graduate from a for-profit program end up owing money, and typically they're carrying twice the debt load of students from a traditional college. And the for-profit colleges now enroll about 10% of Americans' college students, but they take in more than a quarter of all financial aid at the federal level, which can be as much as $33 billion in a single year. So I think that goes back to your point about how a lot of these Pell Grants and things like that are not really going in the right place, because that money is going into the people who own stock in the company rather than being recirculated into the community through public education.
Yeah, the whole issue of the for-profit colleges has been a big deal for Congress. The Department of Education has tried to write what they call gainful employment regulations, which would require these for-profit schools to show that they are actually creating majors and graduating folks that can be gainfully employed. But one of the things that's, I think, the worst about the for-profit college situation is that they're really, in many respects, earning this profit on the backs of our military men and women, because a big portion of this aid is coming from the new GI Bill for the post-9/11 vets. And these for-profit colleges have sprung up because it's a ready source of income, and they really go at the military folks hard in terms of recruiting them, but then don't provide many services once the folks are in school, and the graduation rate is abysmal.
And that, that's one thing in the area that I'm here up in the North Country. We have a couple of colleges who actually collaborate in the SUNY system, and they have hired someone works directly with the military vets who are now on the 2 campuses, and that's a huge service to those folks because they do have different needs than perhaps the more traditional college student. One of the things I wanted to talk with you too about, Lisa, was the STEM jobs. The Girl Scout Research Institute has just reported that 25% of science jobs, science, technology, engineering, and math, the STEM jobs, are held by women. But in 4 years, by 2018, 9 out of 10 of the fastest growing job categories in the country are going to require significant training in science and math. What does this mean for us as we focus our attention on the Common Core standards and on preparing students for these new jobs of the future? These jobs are going to be among the many of the better paying jobs as well as the ones we need to fill almost right away.
Yeah, you know, the science and math, the whole STEM field, but science and math in particular, everybody's going to need that for the jobs of the future. I mean, to be competitive in a 21st century workplace, in a global marketplace, everything's going to come down to science and math and technology. And so even someone who is doing something they think of as more, I don't know, social service oriented or so forth, they're going to have good experience in terms of science and technology, just because that's how the world is going to be working. That's how connections are going to be made. So getting more women into STEM fields is great. It's a way for them to make additional money and to have some job security. But quite frankly, this needs to happen with all students. And that's where Common Core comes in, because we do want to make sure that we have a baseline for where we know everyone coming through the public education system is going to be when it comes to these STEM fields and other requirements. It's really important because we have a mobile population, as I said earlier, and so someone in New York who hires someone from Nevada, or someone in Ohio who's going to hire someone who went through the Florida schools, needs to know at a minimum level where everybody's going to be, especially in these STEM fields, because that's going to be, you know, we always talk about the fundamentals, the reading and writing. Quite frankly, it's reading, writing, and science, or it's reading, writing, and STEM now. This is really where it's going to be, and it's not just going to be a specialist field anymore. Everyone's going to have that bit of science and math just to get into the workplace.
You know, you make a good point when you're talking about these national standards, because this goes back to the conversation we were having a minute ago about the military. As we know, military families are often moved around the country a lot, and it can be really difficult for kids in those families as they're moving from state to state and base to base to stay up on top of what the local standards are. So something like the Common Core is going to be a big boost for those students, as no matter where they end up in life, because they're actually going to be in schools where there is an understanding about what the needs are.
I think that's a great point. And the other thing I would say is that, conversely, that we have some things we can learn from the military schools. The military schools tend to have longer-serving faculty, so they have more experienced faculty. They tend to have higher graduation rates, tend to have less truancy and discipline problems. So there was actually a whole series on NPR this week that was looking at military education, pointing to these problems in terms of consistency, but also some of the real pluses that have come out of the military education system that we ought to actually be using in broader public schools too.
That's right, and we just heard a few minutes ago from Marie, who talked about leveraging the skills she learned in the military to give her a leg up in the work world. So it's good to know that all parts of our society can be contributing in a way as soon as we get these doors open. I want to especially thank the panelists that we've had today: Lisa Maatz, Francoise Jacobsohn, and Marie Sullivan, for participating in our Google Hangout on economic equality and access. We especially want to thank our audience for paying attention and for listening. This Google Hangout will be posted on our website, which is www.newyorkstatepowher.org. We've heard some powerful and good comments today about these issues, and now it's your turn. You need to go and ask the candidates, how will they help women get STEM jobs, which will pay higher wages that a family will live on? How will they make sure women have access to these non-traditional jobs that for years the doors haven't been opened? How can we address some of these issues around the cost of college and make sure that the doors are open for folks who are in that lower income bracket? So thanks to everybody for watching today. Please remember to register to vote and make sure you vote on November 4th. Next week's PowHer Hangout will feature workplace fairness and paid family leave. So until then, please join us online to continue this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Donna.